So we're gonna start.
Yep, I've got an agenda for today that we have discussed how we'd like to proceed. You guys will start,
Okay.
and then we will consider, probably take a short caucus. Thank you. And then we'll come back and respond. We do have responses to the proposals brought for language from the last time that we were here. And we also have, we would like to, there's some cleanup language that we would like to propose from our perspective.
Okay.
Those relate to Article 10 and Article 12. So we'll present Article 10 and 12, the counter proposals. And we have a couple of MOUs that we, sort of housekeeping MOUs that we have to get signed off on every year related to the differentiated accountability schools. And so we'll cover those as well. All right. Well, thank you.
Ready? Everyone's got a copy? Excellent. All right, so this is the LCTA proposed salary with a total of 5.9 million. That's including benefits. Right, so that's got the fringe included. And what we want to focus on is the
Can you start over again? I'm sorry. I missed what you said at the very beginning.
This is the LCTA salary proposal.
Gotcha. I got that part.
It was like
Right. I got that part. You're here in bargaining.
you know where you are.
I was just distracted. Like you said that we're getting ready to start, and then you said and I was like,
Being disturbed by the table.
yes, I was distracted. You notice I closed my thing because like people are emailing me about crazy stuff.
Okay. So the total cost is coming in at 5.9 million. That includes our benefits. What I want to focus on is the column to the right of the yellow, which is the dollar amount for the raise value. That would be the raise per years of experience of those individuals. You can see that the yellow column functions as the column to the right plus the current annual salary added up. But this would not be the placement scale.
So you're saying that we would not adjust so the highlighted version would not replace the placement schedule.
Correct. So in terms of teachers that are coming in last year, we modified the placement schedule to kind of make sure no one got leapfrogged. So we would like to do something similar, but we're focusing more on the monies right now. So we can have that discussion at a later.
Okay. So the only concern I've got based on the initial piece is that it's based on you have 1941.
Correct, and that
teachers.
Came from the staffing plan that was emailed out that we met on in June, May? When we met, in June when we met on that, that's where that number derives from.
So the reason was when we met, there were some categories of teachers that were not included in the staffing plan that were said that they were dealt with Title I monies or ESC monies that not are part of the general budget. That's where our number. That came from the meeting change.
What number were you anticipating? Well, our average number of teachers for the majority of the spring was right around 2250. So that was where we were when we separated out the funding last year.
Grant.
That's all teachers, right? So when we talk total cost, it's 2250.
It's our understanding that when we left the meeting that we knew that we were going to be building what numbers were in that staffing plan, because that's what the staffing plan and the other dollars were elsewhere. That's misunderstood.
No,
No, yeah, it's fine. I mean, we can you know, the way that we look at this, and I think that, you know, from an overall number, we generally look at the full number of teachers across the board, spread out how much we're looking to spend as a total. We'll incorporate that into, you know, our counter proposal as it relates, so that, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to have a certain amount of total funds that we're committing to increases for teachers, and, you know, it'll be spread across the number that is a realistic, right? If we use 1941, then it's going to be an inflated individually with each person, because our true number of teachers is 2250, and that would include those individuals that are grant funded, but those individuals as being part of our unit, we're not treating them separate.
But they're paid through the grant, not through the general fund.
Okay.
That's what was
I
explained
agree.
to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so
No worries.
Okay, so is there a point in time where we would, right, okay, right now it's 2250.
It changes every single day. That's the
Okay,
issue.
is there a point in time where we're gonna lock in a number and say it's gonna?
We've used 2250
Is that what?
last year. We use, and that's the number that we've used as a average number of teachers, because there's significantly more teachers than, you know, if we were to fill all of our jobs, there's significantly more teachers than that, right? But on the whole, when we've taken snapshots over the course of the last couple of years, that 2250 to 2200 number is a good snapshot. But we're also not, you know, when we talk about our proposal, we're not talking about breaking it down. We'll split the money up however you guys want to do it within reason, right? But we have a total amount of money that we're willing to commit to increases for teachers for this year. And our, you know, don't get me wrong, the priority for us right now is to get teachers paid as soon as possible. We are in a world where we know that it matters. We know that inflation is high, and we want to try and get this dealt with as soon as possible. We don't want to be here in February. You know, our priority is to try and get this done as soon as possible. But just know that the real number that we're dealing with is much higher than the number that you guys.
So as a clarifying point, you said in the spring it was 2250, yet there was a reduction in the staffing plan of about 70 people. So it's
They
not,
weren't in the staffing plan. They were being paid from another funding source.
okay, so I guess but even when you run the report within Skyward, they were not on because it was 2250 even when we did the PERC certification stuff. So they were included in that. So that's where some of the confusion's taking place, that sometimes people are included in the number, sometimes people aren't. We met, people weren't going to be included, and now they're being included. So I think that's where,
If we ran the numbers today, would we get a different number than 2250? Right,
Oh, yeah.
obviously, right?
You're going to get a different number every single day.
Would it be like
Which is why
300
we-
units lower?
Say it again.
Would it be like 300 units
No.
lower?
What we're saying is the number that you may get today may be 2100, because we're still hiring a lot of teachers. But the number that you get starting the end of August, you know, it is going to be much higher. At the end of the day, the way that this, you know, we're not, and we talk about the way that we've budgeted.
Yeah.
We're not budgeting based on a line item. We're not budgeting, you know, because these numbers change every single day. We're budgeting based on averages.
Yes.
And, you know, if the numbers are higher than 2250 when we actually pay it out, because they do get higher, right? And they fluctuate. We're it's not like we're drawing a line and saying we're just spending this much money. We're having to take that total number, that estimated number into account when we say what our total spend is going to be as a lump sum. Sometimes it will be higher.
Kathy, what is the average current teacher salary right now? Because I know we've discussed it. I don't have it right in front of me. It was
Either.
51.
And we're talking without benefits?
That's, yeah.
And just,
If you had both, I would
Okay,
jot
give me
down
a second.
both. That way we can,
I mean, yeah,
look at what that number is.
we'll break and come back with a response here in a second. But I think that it's important to know. I mean, this is an issue we deal with every single year. What is the total number? And I think that the way that we have dealt with this in the past, that we use an average that can be applied to the total allotment.
to your point, an average is not the highest number. So if we're at 21 something now, and there's 28 positions on applicant tracking system, we're not getting a 2250 as an
No,
average.
there's 28 positions maybe listed right this second, but
So
there's
there's
probably
70.
200 or more open positions that have not been filled. Maybe, and that's just a crazy estimate. It could be more than that, because the snapshot is just the 5 days or the 7 days that they're advertising the position. And then there's a period of time in which they're interviewing and doing all of the rest. So there's a lot of vacancies that are out.
So
How do you
Just for
know what the
clarity.
vacancies are? How would you fill a vacancy if it's not on the application tracking
So
system?
it would have been on the application. Like at some point in time, the way that our process works is they do a request to post. It goes onto the job board. It is posted for a number of days and then it comes off. Well, just this doesn't disappear at that point in time. It goes on to, we have a list of positions that have been advertised, but have closed, but have not yet been filled. And so those positions, the reality is they sit there for a while until they're actually filled. Once they're filled, they come off that list and they're closed.
So for
right?
example, you might only see right now 2 positions posted for NIMS middle school, but they could have 8 positions in
That have
top
been
of that
advertised,
that
yes.
are in the
That
product.
are in process, correct.
So a total of 10 positions, right? That's how that would end up.
Using round numbers. It
Yeah,
could be
basic.
So we're based off of what the logic we shared, and that there's open positions and maybe hundreds of opens. That means that we're starting the school with hundreds of unfilled positions.
What I would say is I don't know the number specifically, but our average number of teachers during the last 2 years has been 2250. Right. So if that's where we're at. I don't have the actual number of total vacancies that we've got right this second. Right. But it's not uncommon for us to have a number of teacher vacancies that are in the process of being filled.
So if the teachers, 1940 teachers, 1940 teachers, is what's paid out of the general fund. Because
It's out of the staffing plan. That's what's budgeted in the staffing plan. There's other funding sources in the general fund that pay for teachers as well. So if the school elects to use their AP funds, it's technically still general. It's just not in the staffing plan. IB funds, they could be paying for it out of their 20%. They could be paying for it out of their base. So there's other teachers that the schools have on staff that again come out of the general fund. The turnaround schools, those are really the main ones I can think of that would be above and beyond the staffing plan, but are still funded out of the general fund.
And we have a total budget, right? So we have to take into account, all of our teaching positions and their different funding sources as it relates to how we spend our total budget and ultimately what our projected ending funding balance is. And so as we've gone through this, we're trying to focus on what can we give so that we can maintain an ending funding balance that is within the guidelines set by Florida statute, and be in a fiscally responsible, position, overall. And I feel like, what we are planning to put on the table would do that, right? But we're still limited by the total budget. We talk about what our allocation for teachers is, and that allocation is to go across all teachers and not just this little not little carve out, but a percentage of the teachers that have been carved out that are that are in the staffing plan funding, right? We've dedicated a budget for increases that covers all of those individuals, and we've taken into consideration all of the different funding sources when we've evaluated our ability to extend ourselves by that amount.
Okay, well, so at this point in time, right, we've submitted what we have based on the numbers that we calculate from that staffing plan. Without having an opportunity to sit in caucus, I can't
No, that's fine.
do anything else right now here at the table to modify what we've done. I know that you have something for us that we could take into consideration before we caucus. Do you want to?
No, I need to caucus before
Okay, you
we
need to
come back, and then we'll talk about what our proposal would be.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding 100% what you're looking for. Can you explain, just so I can understand, the methodology around the raise amounts and their relationship? You said this wouldn't replace the schedule, but what is the relationship to the raise amounts and the schedule? What is the?
So at the beginning,
You can take it because I was going to ask you to rephrase your
Okay.
question. So if you got it on
Yeah.
the first go.
So at the beginning, teachers, regardless whether or not they taught, we believe that we still need to start working on still increasing it past 774.5, right? Or the 47.5. Like the idea of 75. Sure,
You
let's
guys have
go.
already modified your team?
Let's talk about the number of teachers again.
So to that extent, we want to make sure that we do something for them. Last year, did the 575 to the increase to get us to the 75. Additionally, we realized that we have the issues of compression that still have taken place. And so we're trying to make sure that we kind of move people apart in that 0 to or the 1 to 14 range. And then as far as our, kind of seasoned veterans, the issue is we still need to get to a salary that is able for them to retire comparable to the folks that did about 10 years ago, because the top 5 is not necessarily what top 5 comparably in the market is, right?
Doesn't the higher percentages at the less years of experience increase the problem with compression from everybody's perspective?
I don't think those are higher percentages. Those are just a percent of teachers.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
a
I'm sorry.
percent.
Yeah.
That's 15%.
Yeah.
But it would, if you were,
Yeah.
it would.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, 15% of, no, that's okay. The 15% of our teachers are first year. I mean, that's pretty significant. And so
it's fair to say that in whatever we end up landing on with regard to a salary schedule, you would be looking to increase the salary schedule base to 48.
and then we can determine what.
And then we determine where it goes
difference is
from
so that no one gets leapfrogged.
Okay, can let's take a little bit of
Is there like a language like we can consider during this, or you want to hold off in caucus?
I would rather, it's going to be a short caucus.
Okay, that's fine.
So
Okay.
I would rather do the language after,
That's fine.
if you don't mind.
And average, I figured you were right, got your pen, 50,450.40, and then with benefits is 68,827.13 for the 24-25 year.
Can you say that second?
Sure, 68,827.13.
What does that make the benefits percentage?
The problem is We're still going with 22. I think if it's a regular employee, it's like 21 point something something, but we have so many people now extending and drop that factor is way higher than 22%. So we're still just using 22%.
But it's 50,450.40 is without benefits.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I got. Cool.
All right. You guys want to stay here? Well,
How long? Yeah, we can, it's 9:24.
15 minutes.
Sure.
we're going to start with Kathy sort of giving a financial overview of the, the current status and then sort of where we stand financially. In addition, we'll cover we'll give you guys the offer, and then talk about where it results in us ending the year from a fund balance perspective. And then from there, we'll go into our language proposals and then our language counters. Does that sound like plan?
So I guess for next year, there is a slight increase from the legislature in our FEFP funding. But keep in mind, like last year, they rolled a lot of those categoricals in there, and there's things that we're still responsible for. So while it went up, it wasn't great. We got very lucky that we didn't have any, we didn't have any retirement increases, but we did have a health insurance increase on our side of about 6.5%. So that's all factored in. And then we absorbed, as you know, numerous ESSER positions into the staffing plan, which increased the staffing plan budget for this year. So after the new revenues come in, after we put all the expenditures out, we're looking to have about a 3.6% fund balance for ending 24-25. We still have the emergency reserve set aside of the $5 million. And just keep in mind with ESSER ending, we have a little bit of a grasp on the positions, but we're coming across things that were being paid out of one of those multiple grants that now have to be absorbed and didn't really get accounted for. We still have declining enrollment with the scholarships. They are increasing every year, and we anticipate that's just going to continue, unfortunately. Just like everywhere, we're having increased costs from our insurances to our utilities, things of that nature. And then this year we also got hit with the flood at Godby and the tornado. So while we have insurance claims outstanding, we have way more expenditures out than what we've received claim money for. So we still have to battle that in the next year. So with that, turn over to Brett.
Sorry, what was the ending fund balance of 23-24?
Tentatively, because we still haven't official, this is all tentative.
Okay.
We are looking at an ending fund balance in the general fund. Bear with me. Hold on, I'm sorry. Unrestricted is going to be about 20 million. And the total is about 57.
What's that in percentages? Do you
I don't have the
Okay,
percentages,
that's fine.
unfortunately. I know the unrestricted is about, oh no, I don't, I'm sorry, that's on the ending for 24-25. I do not have percentages on that.
Okay, but that was based out of approximately $600 million budget?
Correct. So the
Okay.
beginning fund, no,
Oh.
for just general fund. So it was
Sorry.
about 350, I think, for last year. So we're talking 23-24 ending.
All right. So obviously, what we are looking at,
We don't have anything in front of us. Are you about to?
I'm going to give it to you.
Correct. On the
So,
side.
right. So just to clarify, what I'm about to give you really will highlight where we estimate that our ending fund balance for 24-25 would land. If we're to include the increase as allocated, right? So we've included just the base fund balance, and then where our emergency fund, which is non-recurring funds, it's just right now it's just $5 million sitting in an account, non-recurring, where it would end, because we've included bringing that emergency fund down significantly in this offer. Okay. The reality of the situation, you can go ahead and pass it out. Yeah. The reality of the situation is that we really feel like we are digging as absolutely as deep as we possibly can, and turning over every rock to put in what we consider to be a very fair offer on the table. An offer that really puts us in a position where we are dwindling, as you can see, dwindling our emergency reserve from 5 million to 3 million. So our offer is $4 million. It's $4 million to be spent,
Including TISA.
including TISA. It's basically 1.95 of TISA, and the remaining portion is LCS contribution. That would result in our formal fund balance going below 3% to 2.82, but we would still have the $3 million emergency fund that goes. That's part of our overall fund balance. So it put us just slightly above 3 million, or sorry, 3% on that fund balance. You know, as we've said in the past, we do not believe in putting numbers out there, fictitious numbers out there, and then sort of moving up. We're trying to put our best offer on the table. We feel like where we stand right now, especially with the reduction of our emergency fund, it puts us in a position that is extremely defensible. From a fiscal perspective, we feel like this is a risk. This is very much a risk on our part. We do value the contribution that teachers are making, and we're taking that risk because of that value. Because we feel like it's important to extend ourselves as much as we possibly can. But that ultimately where we stand is this our number.
What is the total instructional salary budget for 24-25?
The total staffing plan is 201 million. But that includes
Different
yes.
200 million.
201
Prior
million is
to
the
breaking
staffing
down.
at the school, correct? Out of the staffing plan, again, none of those above and beyond additional units.
So I guess just to clarify a point, that if the additional 2 million was not used from the reserve, then it would have just been TISA. Right.
Oh, so the 2 million from, just to clarify, the 2 million from the reserve is a total package, right? So we have to look at the other two unions as we are projecting out where our fund balance lands. So when we take away the money from the reserve, it's not like the full amount for LCTA would have been coming from the reserve. It's like the full projected amount for all three unions and all administrative staff increases is coming from the existing funds, right? And with that in mind, that's where we land at the fund balance that is right around $13.3 billion.
Right. But if you hadn't gone into the reserves, then it would have just been TISA with the increases for the other bargaining units.
No. I mean, no. If we hadn't gone into the reserve, it would have been spread more. It's not like we would have just leave LCT out. We would have gone down if we had not touched the reserve. We would have gone down to the $10.3 million, and the numbers would have fallen out differently, right? But ultimately, because this isn't being done in a vacuum with just LCTA in mind, it would be some iteration of funding that is slightly above TISA. Our ability with reductions to what we do to everyone else, right? So as it stands, we are able to put together a package that is $4 million in whole. That we feel like is very fair based on the current financial situation.
So right now there's approximately $20 million in the unspent general fund money.
Ending
ending
fund
20
balance,
yeah,
correct.
23-24. And you're anticipating that $20 million to dwindle down to the 10.3. Is that all the same category of money, right?
Technically, little over 13 with the ending and then taking the raises out.
Because the fund balance piece, the differentiation is somewhat artificial. I mean, when you talk about the fund balance and the emergency fund, when the state looks at the total fund balance piece, it's a combination.
The emergency is assigned
Correct.
and
We
the other is
assign it,
unassigned.
correct.
So it was all unassigned. They've assigned the emergency stuff, but to us, we're like, assign something else, right?
Right.
Like we're getting.
Which is what we're doing.
Artificial
We're taking from that money and giving it to you,
I just wanted to
Or
make sure I
to-
had.
to the fund that's paying for increases this year.
So hypothetically, that's a $7 million reduction.
Correct.
I just want to make sure I'm at this. All the same pots of money. So your compensation proposal is just $4 million, no breakdown, no.
We're saying $4 million, and we'll work with you guys to assign it however you'd like to assign it within reason. I mean, the only thing that really, when we say within reason, it is we have to watch how we're affecting the schedule moving forward in terms of recurring funds, right? But other than that, we don't have any obligations around how it's divided.
Yeah, can we continue with some language?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was the plan. Okay.
Unless anybody else on the team,
You passed, please.
so hold on.
So like I said, the first two things that we're going to address are new proposals from us. And they're really cleanup language, some substantive language, proposals in 10 and 12. But very small. We're trying to save paper here. Trying to save paper.
Get a double-sided print.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, what the heck?
Are we gonna start with 10?
We're starting with 10.
Okay.
So really in 10, the only thing, does everyone have? Okay. So this is language that was adjusted not a real long time ago. Yes, ma'am.
I was looking.
It's separate. So they don't have a copy of it. We can pass it to them. Yeah, we just.
Yes.
Do y'all have a copy of it? Yeah, it's separate. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Right.
So the changes are in F. And essentially what we're looking for here is to remove the requirement that principals advise the employee that they have the right to union representation as a requirement. We all understand that Weingarten rights exist, right? But ultimately, nowhere in law is it required that the administrator specifically tell the individual that you may have representation because this is an investigatory interview that may result in disciplinary action. Our rationale behind that is at that point in time, in most cases, the administrator doesn't have any real perspective on whether or not disciplinary action may occur or will occur. And for us to, we have to sort of make that leap to say, yeah, every single conversation that we're having, we have to advise them that they need to have their representation and that it may result in disciplinary action when that's not really the case. So clearly Weingarten rights exist, and that if we request a meeting with an individual, we're obviously going to request meetings in a formal way that allows for the individual to have time to contact a rep and have them there if they'd like, right? But we don't want to set the stage that every single meeting is a disciplinary meeting or potential disciplinary meeting that requires representation.
Weingarten says possible, it could lead.
I understand that. Yeah. And what we're saying is, but it could, every single conversation is, what I'm saying is that the principal in those cases are really having to make a determination when they're asking to meet with the individual as to whether or not every single meeting is going to result in an investigatory interview or could possibly lead to disciplinary action, right? And so what we're finding is that they're erring because of this language. They're erring to complying with contract and basically saying, okay, we're engaging in a meeting. You're welcome to bring your representation if you like, which ultimately ends up in the individual feeling like, well, yeah, I definitely need my representation. If you're saying I need my representation, but I need my representation there, which every single instance is calling for it, right? The individual always has that right to bring that individual with them. If they consider it under Weingarten to be a situation where they need their representation. In addition, I think that the language below is a cleanup. And this language specifically relates to the language where it says 24 days. It says, for matters unrelated to a safety or time sensitive matter, which must be immediately addressed to mitigate further harm. If a union representative is not available for the initially scheduled conference/meeting, the conference/meeting shall be rescheduled within 24 work days, is what it currently says. We're suggesting that it should be changed to hours because that 24 work days is just incredibly burdensome and has the effect of delaying the timeliness of any action that is to occur. So if you technically have 24 days that the meeting could be delayed by contract, it just creates a huge delay and it's not possible for us to be timely in our execution of this. Questions?
Has that been a problem yet?
We haven't. Let's clean up. Abuse. There's a big problem. Questions?
For matters unrelated with safety, time sensitive matter, slightly above the 24 words are. Should say for matters related.
If we're just trying to clean up the language.
Okay.
Or just with unrelated would then be any meeting.
That's a good point. So you're saying, okay, we find it real quick. For matters, you're saying it should say for matters related to a safety or time sensitive matter, which must be immediately addressed to mitigate further harm. If a union representative is not available for the initially scheduled meeting. Well, I think it should be saying if it's unrelated. So if it's unrelated, meaning it's carving out safety and time sensitive as the 24-day piece not applying, right? And so we can now make the argument that every one of these actions would be time sensitive because of the timeliness requirement of rest of discipline, right? But we wouldn't have to do that if this was clarified.
Would that allow? Because I read this as like if it's an urgent safety matter, you won't even wait for a union potentially, right?
Correct.
But
I mean,
for safety related matters, but in the absence of safety, you've got to wait
24 days, which hasn't been an issue. Generally, you guys are jumping, we're able to schedule a meeting. And it doesn't, I mean, so 24 hours, we changed that to hours because we really felt like that was maybe, I don't know, maybe a Scrivener's error that got put in there. We could be open from.
You went 24 hours to 24 days.
That's what I'm saying.
To 24 hours. That's a big jump.
But that's why I think it's a Scrivener's error. But you wouldn't jump from, it wasn't.
We understand what you're getting at, and
it wasn't in there as 24 days before the change. It was in, yeah, my understanding it was in there as 24 hours before the change.
What change?
It was changed in like 18,
In some
19.
book.
Yes.
Right.
Um,
Prior, it talks about 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, but that being said, I mean, we're open to a reasonable time frame. You know what I mean? So if you guys want to counter with a different time frame, obviously that's the goal is to have it be a functional contract that works. You know, and it wouldn't be functional if if you think about the extremes, right? If all of a sudden every time we wanted to have a meeting, in which it may or may not be this one, but because we've advised that the principals are feeling like, okay, I got to advise them of representation. Well, then every time we want to have a meeting, it's potentially delayed by 24 days. You get the gist of it, right? So anyway, I know that's the extreme, but it's the contract language. So it could be applied.
Yeah, the contract persists beyond everyone at this table, and we are great to work with, but we don't know about the next people. All right, so we're always saying.
100%.
That's great to work with.
That's a great argument. That's a great argument, Chris. That's a great argument. All right, so and then also move on to 12. And so 12, the language that we're looking to remove in this situation is the language that relates to substitutes. Substitutes who work in the same teaching position for 20 consecutive school days shall be placed at the appropriate step of the regular employee's salary schedule and will receive all benefits stated in this contract for the duration of it. There's two reasons why we do not feel like this language is appropriate for this contract. First, the LCTA does not cover substitutes. Secondly, state law and our policy requires that any individual that's going into a regular teaching position be certified. In most cases, 99.9% of the cases these days, now understand that in times past were different circumstances, right? But these days, it is very, very rare, other than the odd retired teacher who maintained their certification, that we have subs that have certification, right? Used to be that when all of our positions filled and we had a lot of certified folks that were looking to get on with us, there were people in those ranks of substitute teachers that were certified that this language would have applied to, conceivably, right? But even going back to that, you guys don't cover substitutes as temporary employees. So that's our reasons for wanting to take that one.
So is the substitute illegally subbing for the 20 days anyway? I don't get the argument. It only seems to come into play when you have to pay them. So the substitutes are in the teaching position already without a certificate.
They're not in that position. We're not putting.
They're subbing the class. They're in the class. They're subbing it. Today is the first day. Tomorrow's the second.
So,
and then it goes to 20 and then 30. It's happened. We had an issue last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't get it. What stops you from paying them more money?
Nothing stops us from paying them more money, other than it impacts our budget if we were to do that now. So what has happened in reality is because of this language, we have subs that are just arbitrarily, in order to avoid having to pay the individual based upon the language and not being in compliance with our policy. We have principals that have moved or have stopped the assignments and have changed things so that because they know that they're not able to pay these individuals based upon or they're not able to put them into the normal position,
So for
right?
example,
Because they're not certified, right?
A teacher that goes on maternity leave gets a sub 6 to 8 weeks, that extends beyond the 20 days. Day 19, that sub's pulled, a new one's put in. Day 22, that sub comes back in, but because it's broken the 20-day consecutive, you're now avoiding
That is something.
12.5.
I'll be honest with you, that's something that has happened.
Right.
Yes.
Do we think that is not trying to unilaterally rewrite the contract constructively by doing that?
But subs are not covered in the unit. So not a position covered under this contract. So
I understand that argument,
right.
but the argument that you can avoid a piece of contract constructed like that is not really, legal.
Well, this is
I
some-
think
well,
so.
let me
That's
also
what I'm
say,
trying to
this
say.
isn't an instruction. It's not in our policy that we have told people to do this. All I'm saying is that that's something that has happened.
But whether someone's instructed to or not, if they do something that's outside that would be considered a violation, illegal, whatever, it's still a legal violation, period.
Well, so you guys don't have standing to file a grievance in it because you don't represent subs.
And then but we represent the bargaining unit, which is instructional. And part of the issue that we have here is this idea that, as we know, there were a couple of classrooms last year, subs almost all throughout the year, if not the entire year. But then that creates a lapse salary. That then creates issues where we have a budget that's supposed to go towards instructional salaries that we negotiate. There's an issue of continuity of instruction, of making sure that somebody is in the classroom that is doing the work of a teacher in that capacity, but then considered less than, and that we could, so basically you could not fill any position in the district, put substitutes in all of them and replace our entire bargaining. And
Do you think that that's what's happening?
No, I'm just saying.
I mean,
It's like we're not waiting 24 days.
the
right?
reality of the situation, is the only time that we have subs in these positions for this length of time is when we are unable to fill that job for very practical reasons. Our principals are scouring the community to try and find people to fill these jobs that are certified.
Right, but
Right.
the sub is able to do the job the teacher was gonna do. It's not an opportunity for you to save money. It's an opportunity to pay the employee doing the work. And this thing about the state law requiring people in the teaching position to be certified goes back to well, you have principals moving these people around every 20 days, so you have people in.
That's not a normal practice by which
Right.
that has happened.
I didn't say it was. I just said it. I just said it happened also. I didn't say it was normal practice, but if it's illegal to do that and you know it's happening once, you need to stop it once, right? And so you can't be in that position without a certificate. Why are they in that position a day? Because I don't think that is what
It's
the
a
application of that law
temporary
is.
position. So
Right, so it's not really
the
an argument.
consideration
That's my
is that
point.
this
It's
is
not
a
an
temporary position.
Right.
And the circumstances at times predicate that it extends beyond temporary because
That wouldn't allow you to
Of-
avoid statute. So my whole point is that does not apply here, right? You're breaking the law, you're not. I think you're not because it doesn't apply here. That's all I'm saying.
it doesn't apply in these temporary situations.
Right.
Yeah, and they remain
Doesn't apply.
temporary,
Right.
so.
Well, the whole point is it's temporary, right?
Right.
It's no longer temporary, but all right.
Right.
Yes, that's what the policy.
And that's why a contract actually trumps policy, which is why you have bargaining units, so that you can go ahead and influence those things and advocate.
What's the policy, Wallace?
I am pulling it up as we. The policy language states that the substitute, and I'll give you the exact policy number, has to be certified in the area. And of course, that's necessary to become the teacher of record, to have that statement of eligibility that you need in order to become a teacher. So right now, with that being a position that is not a part of the bargaining unit, and they do not have to meet those minimum qualifications to become a teacher, that wouldn't necessarily gel with what Brett was saying, the certification qualification requirements and what is already listed in our policy as well.
So your policy says subs have to be certified in the area they're teaching?
If they are to receive the teacher pay after they've been in the classroom for
Okay,
those
so actually
20
you have a mechanism for this language. You just are missing the sentence of when they have the qualifications. I think what I'm hearing is your policy says, well, I don't have a policy, so you're paying them teacher pay after the 20th day.
if they
If
meet
they're
the
certified.
If they
certification
meet the
requirements.
certification.
Correct.
Which is why it goes back to a date and time in the past when we had a lot of these types of individuals that were subbing who had the certification. And in those timeframes, we did that. It's just not something that comes up.
It is, right, policy 4120.04.
do those subs become teachers immediately? I don't know why you would.
Well, they would already meet all of the qualifications.
So that, right.
Right.
And then
So in years
So they-
past,
Good.
when we had people who, for lack of a better phrase, ended up subbing, maybe they were waiting on their credential coming through, where they had their credential and the positions in the district were all gone.
Mhm.
So this was a way that they could potentially, oh, it's in my certification area, they would sub. And if they were there and eligible after the 20th day, they could earn the teacher.
Got it.
Right.
That's
We-
what happened in years.
Right. We used to have a line of applicants,
Mhm.
not anymore, obviously, right?
I don't know why.
All right. So now I'm gonna move into our counter proposals one by one. For the proposals that you guys put forward at the last meeting. We organized it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Copy.
Yeah, should be.
It was around this. Good catch.
I understand.
So we organized this the same way that you guys organized your groups. We go point, point by point, article by article. It's not all the article language together on each page, but we tried to organize it the same way that you did. So we will go through. So just in this situation, this is a current contract language. We feel like current contract language is the best case scenario. Operationally, increasing the lunchtime will create scheduling issues and span way too much time throughout the day. If we're increasing it, especially the elementary schools, by 6 to 8 minutes, then that has a compounding effect over the course of the day, and would affect our overall scheduling throughout. Not just the scheduling for lunches, but also the scheduling for planning time and other time within the day. So we're proposing current contract language in this scenario. I think that the papers that you're looking at include the last sentence being removed. That is not our intention. That's a scrivener's error. It should still say on planning days, the lunch period shall be 1 hour. Okay, at the end.
That sentence
Oh.
did not make them.
Gotcha. It was just a mistake on.
Okay, but your intention is to keep that.
It isn't, yeah.
Does that mean all employees will have a 22-minute lunch except for planning day?
I think what it means is that we have contract language that's been in place for a very long time. And it is that way because of the operational needs. And, you guys agreed to it at one point in time. And that's why we have it. And so to change the language would be a significant burden operationally on those schools. And that's the reason why we feel like it's worth.
Is the district willing to look at operationally enhancing the facilities with this capital outlay dollars to eventually get to a point where something like this could happen?
I think in many cases, there are things that we're willing to look at and to study and to come across ways to make things happen. It's not like just on principle. We think that, 24 minutes is enough. To be honest, in the conversations, I'll look to Anisha. in the conversations around elementary lunch periods and how long it takes for students to generally eat their lunch or people to, to complete that time frame. What was the feedback?
Well, same with kindergartners, by the time they get all their packages open. But in general, yeah, but kindergartners, sometimes they take a little bit longer until they've been through the system for a while. We get through routines. Yeah, routines.
So, I mean, so going back to what I was saying is this is something and what we will, our response in numerous of these cases to proposed language that you put forward. And, we've had really in-depth conversations with the board around that. There is a great deal of, understanding and sympathy around a lot of these issues, but there's also the recognition that that the practice, to change the practice, would create significant operational burdens that would cause the extension of the day, would impact planning, would have all sorts of additional impacts. So we're willing to study those and to potentially come up with resolutions, to your point, Scott, ways that we might be able to make changes to the language that also, would account for the operational challenges that we face. But as it stands, this language, we can't just change it without having done that work and expect for us to be able to operationalize it without a hitch. So to that end, I'm going to propose that we, on many of these instances, that we form work groups to try and develop sort of joint approaches to resolutions that could work, that take into consideration the challenges that we as a school district have versus the desires of the teachers. We're here to support the teachers, right? We just have to figure out how we can make it work. Okay. We are willing to, as we go down, you proposed language that said transition time shall not be considered part of the planning time. We're willing to accept that language. You would in the alternative teacher comp paragraph under you would propose the district shall provide alternative teacher compensation leave submission form within the district platform where submissions, approvals, denials, and usage can be tracked. We are willing to provide an alternative teacher compensation leave submission form. We do not have the capability right now within Skyward to make this an interactive form. This is something we need to continue to work on. Obviously, to be honest with you, barring a systematic issue, that would be great to have this, right? But we have a system issue at this point in time that prevents it from happening. And so we're not able to agree to the language, but we're willing to work on trying to find a resolution systematically that would allow for the facilitation of ACOM through the system, because I think that's the most efficient way to manage it. We agree with that. So how we do it is the question. So we're agreeing, we're saying that the district shall provide alternative teacher comps, but then from that point forward, we're just going to be picking up the current contract language. Okay. In 7.01 A3B3, this language is language that we're proposing. It was not proposed by you, but we're proposing to change this language primarily because it's redundant as it relates to the ACOM. So what we're saying here is that when an employee does not receive his or her regular planning time as a result of the site administrator directing the employee to substitute for another employee's assigned classroom duties, or to be involved in an activity that is not related to delivery of instruction, the employee shall receive compensatory time. Well, in those instances, they are now receiving, if they're not getting their 6 hours, they're receiving ACOM, which is separate and apart from COM. And so what we would just, I think that there's a conflict in the language there that needs to be clarified. I don't want a principal giving them comp time when they should be getting it. Okay,
So 7.1A3B3.
Yeah.
That whole first sentence. Wrong one. You have that strike through.
struck it.
Okay. I can make sure that that was the same thing. So you just want to keep the second part.
Just keep the same. 100%. All right. Okay, so your proposal number 2, all compensatory time shall be treated as alternative compensatory leave.
We don't have that.
So 7.04.
Correct, but it is a few pages. in-
Yeah, yeah.
Let's get more than that. In the packet that we provided.
All right, let me go to that packet. Can I have a copy of that packet?
Which would make sense. That's
There we go.
makes sense. So do you want to just jump to 7.02?
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where that. So obviously in this, it just fell out of mine. When I put my plan together, it fell out of yours. So I apologize. So basically in this situation, the language that you guys have proposed related to that the specific professional duty be compensated at their hourly rate is something that would have significant impact on our budgets. Professional duty has always been considered part of the responsibility of teachers as part of being a salaried employee. And so as such, in those limited instances, they're not being paid at their hourly rate. There are many other instances where we have clearly expanded compensation to other areas that are not considered to be professional duty. It gives them the opportunity to earn additional monies at when they're performing those roles. However, professional duty we feel like is already encompassed in their responsibilities as.
So you're just reverting.
So we're just reverting that to her. So then we go to F.
Better understanding on this one. So you're not required to stay beyond the day. You write it 7.5, that's your day, or 8.5, whatever. Unless you are specifically assigned a duty. So, for example, at this point in time, I'm an ESC teacher. I've got IEP meetings that extend 3 hours past the day for every day because there's that many IEPs. I'll never get compensated or anything. My technical work day is now 10.5 hours because I've been assigned to go to a meeting.
It's professional responsibility as it stands as the current contract and the way it's been. And this isn't new language. So
Clarifying.
And what I would argue is that as we get, you guys have clearly outlined later in the proposal, a schedule for compensating for additional caseloads for ESE professionals and other additions to the workload of teachers. And we'll get to that proposal, but ultimately we're interested in trying to figure out a way where we can address those concerns operationally in a way that the district can afford to offset. So it goes back to teachers are professionals and have always been professionals. who are exempt from Fair Labor Standards, right? So as it stands, they're not hourly employees. They are professionals and they have professional duties.
I understand.
They have professional duties. And so in those instances, yes, those would fall under their professional duties, and they would not be paid hour for those. However, we have, as we've discussed countless times in years past, you know, there's been the assignment of the ability to assign comp time within the contract. There's been the ability to offset that time with 1 day, 9 weeks for ESE professionals. So we've obviously demonstrated a willingness to continue to work with you on these issues, and we're willing to continue to do it as well. We just, at this point in time, to do this would have a significant financial impact on our district. And we, like we just talked about, we currently are budgeting $4 million for teacher increases. To incorporate many of these things would mean that we don't have the ability to do.
Right. I just wanted, there's no limitation on this whatsoever. And as more demands are there and requests are made of people where they have their own personal schedules and lives and children, that if you're expected to extend beyond the day, hour after hour, or for these meetings that sometimes take place in those specific roles, and there's no mechanism where it's at least alternative compensatory time, and it's just, we'll give you some comp time that you can use when students aren't available, which means it's your planning day, but you still need to use the place. Like, there's no time to really meet that. That's what I need for the district, for you to understand, is part of the reason why we're trying to move towards a comp time as a comp time rather than what was traditionally considered compensatory time.
I don't know that you say that they're more and more and more. I think that the responsibilities of ESE teachers and their obligations as relates to IEPs are not significantly more than they've ever been before. I mean, they're essentially, we've had this same language for a very long time, and we've always had the expectation that teachers are grading papers and having meetings and performing professional duties that are associated with their role as professionals. And so, while I understand 100% where you're coming from, and we are willing to continue to try to work to resolve it, this particular proposal is not something we can accept because of the financial impact on our budgets.
So I think that while that this is something that teachers have been doing for a very long time, we're experiencing a culture shift in our employees, right? We're experiencing a younger generation that has different expectations, that has different requirements. And when they are not treated as such professionals, or they don't believe they're treated as such professionals, they just up and leave, right? So the work ethic and the expectation that this is going to be continued to be done either non-compensated or continuously above the 7.5 hours, 8.5 hours, whatever the hour number will be, is the culture is shifting. And I think that as a district, we need to look at what that shift is with our employees and how that's going to play a role into contract language, into our budgets, into all of the things, because our people are no longer just as willing to do all the things.
And we recognize that fact.
Yeah.
And that's why we say we're willing to try to come to, some sort of to develop some sort of a plan that to deal with these issues in a way that our budgets can incorporate. And, but that's not the reality right this second. We don't have the ability to change these things that have huge financial impacts and still, give offers for $4 million pay increases for teachers, right? So I mean, that's that's the reality of it fiscally. And I think that we have to develop a plan. It has to be a joint effort. And you know, we're not standing on principle here. We're just saying that it's not a fiscal reality unless we figure out a way to make it happen. And so,
Just don't have the meetings after hours.
okay, well that's something that we can look at as part of these work groups to develop a plan, right? So I mean that's as we work together to come up with a solution. There are also other realities that go along with the profession of teaching, right?
Yeah, but there's a reality that teachers are not paid. We understand that. Everyone in this room understands that. And the reality that half of our teachers have a second job that does pay them. And they are held accountable for these meetings after hours, but they can't afford to attend with professional duties. So, like, somebody's got to give, and somebody's got to give quick. That's why we were saying, okay, if they're going to be required to go to these, we wanted to be paid at our hourly rate so that we can work to stay in this profession.
It's not that they're going to be that expectation has been there for many years. This is not something new.
Okay. The expectation's been there. What's happening right now in this culture shift of what we're trying to tell you, and everybody on this table is agree. I mean, everybody can agree.
We agree that
There's nobody lining up to be a teacher because of that. So what do we need to do? We need to shift. It's famous Ross quote: pivot. Okay, so we need to pivot. But that's what we're asking. Like,
and what we're saying is we're willing to develop a plan to pivot, but the pivot point cannot withstand the fiscal impact of this change at this point in time. So like we cannot accept this language because of the fiscal impact it would have on our budgets and our ability to pay the teachers that we have currently. So we need to develop a plan, turn over some rocks to find ways that we can make this happen and still fit within our budgets.
That no employee shall be required to stay beyond their scheduled workday to participate in activities.
We can counter it.
Period. I mean, that's, yeah.
I think
Right, we're gonna move
issue
forward.
is ESC got more advocates, we need to last much longer and have the tendency to extend. So it's something that I think we're all very cognizant of moving forward, that the amount of time it's taking is taking.
Yeah. Well, and I want to communicate that this is one of the, especially the ESC and the teacher caseload stuff that is outlined later in great detail is of great interest to the board and to the superintendent. And they recognize this as being an issue that we have got to come together to come up with a solution.
And it does also impact what you would consider a regular classroom teacher. So they're involved in those. So it's not
100%. Well, that's why I think that as we're talking about those caseloads in general, you guys are addressing, the addition of students and all of those things, how the addition of students for split classes and whatnot, and how that would impact their pay. It all comes together into sort of an overall approach that is much more far-reaching than us just agreeing to language and putting it into effect ASAP. It's got to be much more planful and really researched for us to be able to to ensure that we're not going to obligate the district to a financial obligation that's going to put us in bankruptcy. That puts us in a situation where we can't pay the bills. So we've got to make sure that it's got to be thoughtful.
So back to that, it could be very thoughtful to tell the entire admin team to not have meetings after hours. I mean, that's just, I mean, you don't have it, and then it wouldn't impact financially. If they don't have it, then it's not impacting financially.
We only, and the reality of it is we are only calling after hours meetings when it is absolutely essential for that to occur, right? When we're serving students, right? And so students whose parents work, so we can't call, these
So in the essence.
big meetings like orientations and open houses and things like those lines.
We'll move forward for this caucus or, when we get to that. So
100%.
we'll continue on to
So,
the
okay,
next page, I think is lively. Is that what you've got?
lively,
Okay.
yes. So basically, in this situation for lively, we are reverting to current contract language. As it stands, we see there are no problems with this language at lively. The practice is that they are allowed to do it on Fridays, but we also would like to maintain the flexibility to be able to schedule the hours as needed as things change in the future. So that'll be it. We just need that flexibility. The LCTA proposal to which is 7.03, to change the employee training rate to $35 per hour. We're not willing to change it to $35 an hour. We are willing to change it to $25 an hour. And that the trainers in those instances would be paid $30 per a $30 per hour stipend for facilitating the above mentioned training. So it would shift from 25 as a, from 20 as a training rate to 25 as a training rate, and then we would reserve $30 an hour for those individuals that are participating as trainers. Okay. Proposal 7.05. Question.
D, you're just reverting back to current contract language.
Indeed,
Well,
yes.
you-
Yeah, sorry, at the beginning of the year, yes. Reverting back to current contract.
Okay.
7.05A. Sorry, I think I'm colorblind, so sometimes miss the blue.
The next
So-
page in the packet is 7.04.
Okay. So in this instance, you guys were basically looking to take out or to include language that says all compensatory time that we treat as alternative teacher compensatory, and we're saying that is not something that we are willing to do. We agreed to the alternative teacher compensatory time within a very narrow set of circumstances. It is explicitly for conciliation for lost planning time, or for principals that schedule group activities more than twice a week. It's clearly articulated in language, and that's what we feel like we're able to stick to from a financial perspective. A little bit lower, where you asked, there was a request to include teacher-led parent conferences. We're willing to agree to that. However, we want to change parent or leave parent teacher organization meetings and activities and open and school open houses. Seven point five. You had requested changes, minor changes to the verbiage in 7.05A2. We would insist on current contract language as it stands. In 3, we do not, so there's some, in 3, you were requesting, so employees who are unable to accommodate a meeting extension beyond one half hour, for which the 72-hour notice has not been provided, you're taking out that level, and then shall be excused without reprisal or negative evaluation rating. We're basically saying that we can agree to this. Obviously, we don't agree to taking out the portion or to including the portion that says for which the 72 hours notice has not been provided, but we're saying that the employees who are unable to accommodate a meeting extension beyond 1/2 hour shall be excused without reprisal or negative evaluation rating. And then we'd say, add to that, it is the employee's responsibility to obtain any information missed during that extended time. So for extending, we don't have any problem, it's, letting the individual go. They're just gonna be responsible for getting that information. Either from the administrator, assistant principal, or a coworker, so that they're getting the information that is presented at that meeting. Okay. In A, below, actually it should be B, in B below. You guys had proposed putting in language that would have required meetings at the hour of 8. We are not able to do that due to the conflict. So we would revert to that.
For the 7.053, when, just as an example, the school day ends at students dismiss at what, 2:50 in an elementary school, right? Back to meeting begins, usually get off at 3:30. So at 4 o'clock, the way that the language reads here is that the individual would be able to leave the meeting, give the information, and that would be okay.
Correct. I mean, so the purpose of the language isn't to say we're not going to ever have meetings that are beyond 30 minutes, and that anyone's free to get up and leave without reason, without good reason or cause, just because they can, right? As long as they get the information. But what we're saying is that we are willing to be reasonable in these instances, and to say if you have to pick up your child, or you have to be at another job, or you have to do something along those lines, fine, we understand. Even though in most cases we're giving plenty of notice, but we recognize that sometimes it happens that you can't get out of what you got, right? So no repercussions, no reprisals. They're just responsible for getting the information.
I understand. I appreciate it. How does that apply to middle schools that sometimes have their meetings before school? That mean that they would only start 30 minutes before they're supposed to report?
No, so there are times when they're still going to have meetings that extend, and that we'll tell them, at least 72 hours in advance, because that's the current contract language. But in most cases, what they're doing is providing a schedule that says this is when the meeting is planned for and what the times are, and that's the notice, right? So in those instances, they would, they should still be at those meetings with the given notice. But if they've got good reason not to be there, they could be excused, and they would still get, they would still get the benefit of that.
It's subjective when you say what reason.
It's not outlined in contract. What we're saying is, it doesn't say good reason in contract. It just says that they're able to leave. But what we would hope in this circumstance is that we don't have at that 30-minute mark, because they can, everyone gets up and walks out, right? That's not what we're looking to accomplish with this contract language. What we're looking with this contract language is to say, we recognize that even with 72-hour notice, at times, teachers are going to have to be somewhere. So it's okay if they leave, and they're responsible for that information. So like when I say for good cause, I would hope that a person doesn't say, because I can, I'm getting up at 30 minutes and leaving, when they could, they say, okay, I'm going to, we're having this meeting. It's a collaborative event. You need the information, right? I'm not just going to leave because I can. The contract says I can. So I can get it from my coworker. We're trying to this is a give.
I just wanted to make
This is a gift.
some clarity. That's all. Can you provide?
It's 100%. And I think that as we talk as an operational team, we recognize that stuff like that happens, right? And there are times when people have to be places. So we wanted to make sure that that was allowed. Okay. Moving on to 7.10. Jeez. Is it? That's the next page in this.
It's some kind of here.
Usually tell it something.
7.10.
If that one doesn't have it.
Yeah, what is the? How did this get?
I don't know what zero means.
I'm sorry, guys. Apologize. All right, 7.08, health and safety.
I mean, we don't have that.
It's not in y'all's books either.
No.
Do we have it anywhere?
I don't have this.
Can we? Okay, so can you make a copy of it and bring it back?
Get a prize. You got the duck.
All right, so I'll circle back to 7.08 and I apologize about the
Yes, that.
about the packet.
The only one that have it. I
Well,
don't have it though. Scott has it.
you have it, Scott? No, Hanson.
Hanson.
Oh, Hanson. I don't know how Hanson gets it, but everyone else does it. All right. 7.10, as Kim says.
Well, that's the rest of the world, right? Elementary school teachers, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Classroom supplies. So in B, there are certain aspects of the language that we want to leave the same and others that we agree with, right? So as you can see, our proposal will read, a process will be in place at each school for requesting school supplies and materials to ensure needs are met in a timely manner. And then C, our counter would be Florida Teacher Classroom Assistant Program should be administered in accordance with state law.
Has to anyway. So that's redundant.
Unfortunately, sometimes they give us a credit card, sometimes they don't, so they tell us what we have to use, so at times.
Right, but other districts at times choose those cards.
Yeah, so it's not our plan to do any kind of like Amazon crazy things or anything like that. We recognize that you guys prefer a check, you know, and what we can commit to is that we're going to comply with the requirements of state law, because sometimes, you know, that state law will dictate how it's paid. That may change. 7.16. So within B, we are reverting to current contract language in B.
7.16.
7.16.
Okay, wrong.
7.16, sorry. And then so in C, we'll accept that language, but we're adding that it mandated, like post planning, no mandated professional development shall take place during post plan, right? So it could be we could have post planning development that is not mandatory, that's voluntary in nature. We just want attendance at those nature things.
What would be an example of something like that?
An example of something like that would be, I know this past year we had, Roger Fitzgerald doing resiliency training. And we don't think we ever signed up for resiliency training, so that they could get it out of the way. They wouldn't do this. as a homeschool.
It's an option. Yeah. They could get it in if they.
So
But
like
if their
so like-
principal tells them they have to do resiliency training,
And it's offered on the
Then
last day.
That's what we're saying. We'll tell principals you can't mandate it.
or if they're mandated at a later time, like I expect you to have resiliency training at some point. It's
Right.
still.
But it's
But
only
they,
offered on
they
that
just
last
won't be required to attend it
That's
during
what I'm
post planning.
So you'll make
So they,
sure
we
that
can
they're-
still mandate that they,
It's gonna be
They
multiple
can take it
Yes.
throughout the year.
Okay.
they may be mandated to do the training. It just won't be mandated to do it during post planning.
Just
So there'll be-
on their own time in the summer.
Could be.
For free.
Mhm.
All right, so we're going back to 7.08. And in those instances, you guys had proposed language E and E, F, and G. And we are not willing to accept the language outlined in E and F as proposed. We are willing to accept some of the language in G as proposed and with revision. In those cases, we're saying G would read natural disaster / extreme weather. 1, the district will notify staff of potential closures or changes due to extreme weather as soon as possible. And 2, an administrator or designee shall be on site when students are present. The implications of the changes that you would propose where it says employees are present creates an extreme hardship, because there are all sorts of times when employees may be on campus, and that would mean that anytime an employee is on campus, period, we'd have to have it. And then also, I mean, I would also argue, go back and say that we are already required by this contract to have administrators on campus to deal with student discipline and emergencies in a separate provision, and to provide, and that we're providing that workflow, one of the notices that we're required to send to employees within 30 days of beginning. So this is somewhat repetitive, but we're willing to, edit this supporting language. Questions?
Can we have clarification of why E was struck out?
Communication employees will be informed before any communication is sent to parents and the public to ensure that they're prepared to address any questions. Staff will be notified of the important emergency updates via text message and email. So this is just a hardship that is, we're going to do our very best to communicate with our employees at all times, but to have it in contract that you guys are required to see every communication that is sent to parents before the parents see it is just creates an extreme hardship on the district. So we agree that, and we will acknowledge that we'll do our best to get you the information that is going out to parents, but in every single incident, we can't guarantee.
So the hardship, I understand your hardship, but so our hardship lies with the parents are contacting us about the information. We're like, what are you talking about? And then we don't know that the school's getting closed in 30 minutes. We're like, wait, everyone has to, like, what do we, I mean, like, and by the way, a lot of our teachers are parents themselves. So we're getting the communication. We're like, oh, we got 30 minutes and we're, like, it creates a real problem for teachers to be able to communicate to parents, which is the most important thing that we understand what's going on and we don't look.
But I mean, the bottom line is it's just too broad. It's very broad. So every single
We
incident
have shall be, every effort shall be.
well, I mean, we're welcome to counters. Okay, we're welcome to counters. The issue with this one is that it's too broad, and when you go about trying to operationalize this and put something like this into effect, when you talk about every single communication that goes out, for the teacher having to be notified before the parent, I can't even imagine how many communications that.
Well,
that
I think
that
the
entails.
clarifying point where it falls in with health and safety, I think it narrows it down to health and safety related things, right?
that's-
Or while that still may be broad,
It would not
we're
be
not
the
talking
first
about,
time
like-
that
Or
it's
maybe we could
applied
say
out of
emergency
context.
communication.
So if we could,
That would-
we would be
we
willing
we're
to
mainly
consider alternative language that narrows the focus. Right? And once again, we're not just saying no. If we can narrow the language, we can consider.
Okay, so we're looking at 7.8. I'm sorry.
Yes, I think we're on one. Did we cover 7.16? Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. All right. So this is related to lesson plans. And so you guys had basically included a lot. This is all a lot of new language related to lesson plans that you were proposing would be part of professional courtesy. We're proposing that lesson plans would have its own number, become 7.18, and that the language would read, all teachers must maintain lesson plans. Category 1A teachers on corrective action plans, and teachers at schools designated as district differentiated accountability schools may be required to submit lesson plans for review. All other teachers may be required to submit lesson plans upon request and at the discretion of the administrator. Lesson plans will include essential elements such as state standards and ESC accommodations. We struck the last sentence that you guys were trying to include in there related to where it says, but they will not require excessive detail, which is burdensome for educators. And then we were willing to include, or we agreed that we could say employees shall have access to district resources to assist with lesson planning. We don't really have a problem with lesson banks and stuff like that. We can't really at this point in time commit to artificial intelligence. We know it's coming, but we don't have a policy, right? So as we build out our policies related to artificial intelligence and other support mechanisms for lesson planning, we'll be willing to future language. But right now, we don't feel like it would be appropriate to single out lesson banks and artificial intelligence. We do. We do not agree with the language in C where they can choose their own lesson plan format. We countered with lesson plans must be retained in accordance with state law.
7.18.
This language is not currently in our contract, and it's not neither 7.18, 7.19, or 7.20 are items that we're willing to consider changing at this point in time, as there's no funding available for it. There's considerable costs associated with this language. But like I said before, we're willing to work with you guys to develop plans which may help us to operationalize it and figure out ways to fund it. We just don't have a plan for doing it at this point in time. We'd like to work with you guys to try and figure out a plan for that. Okay. This is another area that specifically the board. I'm not sure how we're supposed to help fund it. No. Obviously, you're free to make contributions. But the board is. I think the board is definitely sympathetic to this issue, and as we have clearly articulated in other parts of the contract that the splitting of classrooms and whatnot to cover for absences is not something that should be done unless it's an emergency. We have clearly set up other mechanisms within our operations to discourage the splitting of classrooms or the addition of additional students to classrooms. We've set up within the LESPR contract. There's a whole new compensation structure to support the use of Paris in substitute situations. We've expanded our substitute pool significantly. So, you know, we are only in very emergent situations are we advocating for. So, but we're open to trying to figure out solutions to this issue, to current, you know, to expand it and to address it. All right. 7.19 professional courtesy. We agree with your language. You know, so as it stands, we're good.
Is, it's 8.01 and 8.02, which is back to current contract language.
I believe so.
And then can we get a clarifying, because I have a note in here and I want to clarify it. On 8.02, we talked about the other instructional delivery methods, which we had equated that to virtual school.
Yeah,
So we're getting it in there.
both of these are current contract language,
Correct, yeah.
and 8.02 is necessary due to virtual.
It need to move to the virtual school section of the contract. To avoid confusion with computer talk classes at middle and high school.
We could.
Okay.
And if you guys want to propose that as a counter, it's fine. Be great. All right, class size limitations in 06.
Did you need to green this?
I know you're colorblind. I think
That's totally my intention. That's totally my intention all along. But you know, so this is where I was speaking earlier about the need for us to get together and to try and figure out a plan that is workable, that can be operationalized. You know, I think it goes back to, you know, not just ESE students and not just ESE teachers and classrooms, but, you know, in general, you know, addressing class size limitations as well as caseload limitations within the context of our normal classrooms and our ESE. But it's not as simple as just implementing this language. So that the board has asked for us to work on this, to pull information from other districts, to see what other districts are doing, so that we may be able to figure out ways that we can make it work here.
So in an effort to do that, let's work for a bit, whatever that may be. What would be a time frame in which a decision would have to be made? Class size, we're going to try this. Okay, so we're going to try this in order to implement it next school year. Does it need to be?
I don't think it's possible.
Not this coming school year, but
No. Well, I think that I think that a time frame would be that we could do it off cycle in terms of bargaining, but it would have to be through an MOU, right? So like because obviously we're in negotiations now. You know, to be frank, we're not going to be agreeing to this language without significant work and without sort of an adjustment to the way that
I guess what I'm getting at is to try this out, regardless of whether it's contract language, an MOU, or additional information to see, okay, we tried it at satellite school A, it seems to work, let's try it at B and C.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think that the mechanism would be we have to put together the work and get it in front of the board, and then we'd have to agree to an MOU that put it into place, either in whatever capacity we decide that we want to put it in place, agree to put it in place based on it.
We've been just trying to come up with some things for a while now. Like, we can agree that this is an every year kind of bring up. And we keep trying to work group it. And we've been in work groups on this, Brett, since 2022.
If it was an easy solution, we would have language for it. I agree, but we don't.
But so what Pam is actually asking is that we can utilize some of the work groups that we've already that's, we start trying to do a pilot of like, just like, hey, let's see if something could work. And if not create an MOU, not do anything like that, but just, so it's,
Well,
just try.
we have to have an MOU in place in order to depart from the current contract. We would have to have an MOU. So that's why I say, yes, with a pilot, anything that we do, we're gonna have to outline in the form of an MOU in order for us to be able to try it out. And so what I think the board is looking for is, they're interested in solutions, recognizing that this is an incredibly difficult and fiscally impactful item, right? And so if we can come up with a solution where we're looking at other districts and how they've been able to successfully implement this, come back to a solution that they would be open to potentially entering into an agreement to try something out.
Thought of the question was, we think tank it, we're the world's best people, we get it together. January, we MOU it. It's possible for schools to build a schedule then around it come May for the following year, like, right? So we'll caucus about it. That's kind of the discussion, is like, we can work group it, but we have to set up a deadline at some point that if we want to actually implement this, we have to implement it before schedule.
Yeah. The reality is whatever we go to implement has to be something that the board is willing to accept, right? And so that's the first and most major part of the lift, given the fiscal impacts, right? And then once we've got that part of it down, it's not that hard at that point to put together the agreement on how we can trial run the process, to gather data, right? Okay. But the biggest aspect of it is, how do we set it up so that we can afford it?
Okay, we can continue forward.
Okay. Once again, 16.05 fiscal impact is unknown. And so we have been asked to dig into this by the board to determine if there are other districts that are doing it, and what the potential impacts are. We're not willing to accept it at this point in time, but it's something that we're digging into. And it may be something that we're willing to consider in the future. This is the payment for cumulative sick leave. 16.5.
Yeah.
You're looking at me like, you're.
Oh no, I've moved forward.
Not following. So I just want to make sure that I wasn't missing a page again, and So,
page 1606.
Okay. So now we're at 16.21.
What do you got?
We're at 16.06.
Like,
Oh, sorry. My
Number blind too.
no, it's not that I'm blind. It's just that. Okay, so I have a rationale document. You know what I mean? And it's. Oh, sorry. I don't know why the rationale documents.
So which number?
We're 16.06. All right. And we are in agreement that to some extent we're saying sick leave shall not be denied if a substitute cannot be secured. We're not willing to say leave in general, because if it's personal charge to sick, we have we withhold the right to deny it. And appropriately so if we cannot find cover. So sick leave will not be denied if a substitute cannot be secured.
Personally, if someone needs to attend a wedding of a sibling, can't secure a sub, you don't get to go. But if you were sick and you needed to go home and take medical forward, you would be able to take the.
According to this language, yes. Yeah. I mean, and
making sure.
And that's essential. And I think that in those circumstances, we're obviously in a personal leave situation, that those the principals are proving those things well in advance, right? There's no expectation that they're gonna not approve, you know, so I know I approved this 3 months ago for you to go, but now you can't go because you can't find a sub. That's not.
So my thing is,
But-
if it's happening, then why can't we codify the contract? Because it's happening.
There are instances.
Because there are instances where a person says tomorrow I can't be here because I've got to do this thing that doesn't qualify for sick leave. It's personal charge to sick. And in that short period of time, they're not able to get a sub. Okay, we'll highlight those and you're welcome to bring that back to me. And we can definitely work through it.
Where leave is put in and leave is not approved until after the person's already taken it.
That is an inappropriate action. You know, so we're supposed to approve those things in advance.
So if you know it, let me know.
100%.
Is there a period of time in advance which you think it would be reasonable to treat it like 6 days? Like if I gave you 30 days notice for personal leave and you could find a sub, that's on you.
Well, I mean,
6 or any number.
It doesn't.
Some number.
It doesn't currently.
Yeah, I know, but it's kind of proposed stuff. So
Yeah.
what would be a number? They're on a range, just give me an idea. Like what do really it's the question is what do principals?
And I think it also goes back to the fundamental thing already.
Wait, say that again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let him finish.
So so if I give you 30 days notice about the wedding and you can't find a sub, like that's on you now. But my question is, what's the number for you all? Is it 15 days, 30 days, 90 days?
It's not currently
There's
addressed,
nothing
but
else.
is there
I'm
a
asking.
number?
So if,
The only provision about the percentage of.
These aren't
teachers that-
provisions or anything. This
Yeah.
is what do principals need?
yeah, well, the issue
Is
is,
it 10 days?
we're all professional. If you came to me and said, my sister's getting married next month, I'm putting in, as an adult and as an administrator, professionally,
Yeah,
I should
sure.
say, I'm gonna honor that. The issue that presents itself in the position, and I have been in this last several years, or last couple of years working in school management, is I know what you're referencing when you say administrators will say, I'm at my quota, you can't go. And I've had people who were sick, who were legitimately going for treatment and were denied. And I stepped in to say, you need to ask more questions. You can't deny that. I understand you're at your quota, but let's see how we can figure it out to support this individual. So it's better communication. And if there are instances where principals are arbitrarily doing that, then you just need to share that with us so that we can make sure that on our end, we're holding them accountable. Then sick leave cannot be denied. I can't say to you that a principal needs 60 days because legitimately there may be something else that occurs and it's less time that's legitimate. So
Right, this is not sick leave. This is referring only to personal.
You're just talking about the-
personal, but I'm just saying in general, personal. So if is it reasonable to say 30 days? I mean, make the proposal and come back. To me, don't want to speak on behalf of all of them. I'm looking at Scott and Anisha, who are their immediate supervisors.
If the percentage
And I would
in
say
the
if-
Contract says 13
Yeah, the unit.
has not
been met, you cannot be denied.
If a teacher puts in for a personal day, significantly in advance, secures a sub on the day of, for whatever reason, 3 or 4 other teachers call out and they start moving and shifting subs. And now what was once a secured sub under my name is now been moved to this class because that class for sure needs a sub. That's not going to be considered anything of this nature, correct? Like that a substitute.
That wouldn't be our problem.
That's not my problem, no. You do get those notifications in Skyward where especially your substitute drop, it's like, well, wait a minute, I have a substitute, why did
Exactly. It's already had that professional conversation.
Okay.
That's on,
Right.
that's on the district.
Right, so there is
I
this
might just
issue
make
of
the rules
not
of
approving till after, which is issue too common.
Then I, again, I need
I'll-
to know who
I'll-
that person is. Like-
But
like I-
is there any monitoring of when those approval dates happen?
Say it again.
Is there any district monitoring of when a request and approvals are taken within the leave system? Is that trackable?
Like statistics about how long it takes to approve it.
Because I
I don't think we don't have reporting capabilities out of True Time or out of Skyward
We get an
on that
email.
function.
You got
But-
email.
I know that we have a mechanism within Skyward to do it, right? But I don't know that those are I don't know that there's a, what I'm getting at is there's no, what I'm getting at is that there's, can I please speak? So there's not a mechanism within Skyward to report out that aspect, the number of days that it takes for something to be approved. We have the tracking capability within Skyward to obviously see how many days it took. There's just no reporting mechanism that at this point in
You
time.
couldn't run a report.
I could run a report to say that on average, we're approving, 30 days, right?
And
So-
so just as a final question, would you agree it's the district's responsibility to have a robust enough substitute pool that this doesn't occur in the first place?
Sure.
So
I mean,
it's really not the. It's,
we have a pool that is a robust pool, right? And so we've indicated that it's not the employee's responsibility to get us up, right? But what we're saying is that in certain instances, if a sub's not able to be found and it's not a if it's a personal charge to sick, or we've already met the percentage, there are instances where we do have the management right to deny leave. And we'll maintain that right.
If that's within 24 hours and I've already boarded the plane before that denial comes through, what's the plan?
That.
Tell us what that
Yeah.
means.
Well,
Yeah.
personal or specific, it's 2 days.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's my thing. There's already a mechanism that.
Can't manage that from a point.
all right.
Not your problem. That's India.
I don't see.
I don't see, I mean, so if those things come up, we need to know about. All right, so there's certain things like, okay, if there's a principal that is going out on a limb that far, we need to know about those circumstances.
Yeah.
And be able to coach that individual. And that's the only way they're gonna be able to do it. Okay, so B. 16.06B. Okay, you guys have proposed to include language that said not, so the site administrator or designee, you guys included then, not a member of the bargaining unit, is responsible for securing all subs for the employee. And then substitutes shall be trained. So we agree with the shall be trained and expected to perform all duties normally performed by the employee who is absent. We do not want to include, which may include, but not limited to duty, but we will say perform the duties by the employee who is absent, with the exception of lesson planning and grading. So we're not putting it on the sub to develop the lesson plan or the grading, as those individuals are not trained to that extent. That we just can't put that.
So you're taking maternity leave from a classroom that you're teaching, Brett. You've got 6 weeks off, but now you're expected while on maternity leave, not being paid to lesson plan and grade those papers because the substitute's unable to do those things.
No, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying
There's a substitute in the
we're not saying that we're putting that on
Who's lesson plan and grade?
we're not saying that we're putting that on the teacher. We're not saying we're putting it on the sub. We're just saying we're responding to the language that says that we're gonna put it on the sub, and we feel like we can't put that requirement on the sub.
Then who is it on? It's these situations.
So we
So
could
can
add,
so are you saying to me, so is this happening on a normal basis where a teacher who's on maternity leave for 6 weeks is being told you have to submit all of your lesson plans and do all of your grading?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That will happen with the school, the teacher, correct?
I did it.
I did it.
They're the only person that. Unless a principal or an assistant.
Unless a principal or
submitting grades is different. than
Okay, so
grading.
Correct.
While not being compensated.
Usually, okay, and
That's a little,
that's different. I,
it could be complex.
yeah.
because Yes, that's a compliment.
When I went out for maternity leave, I did do my lesson plan. Okay, because the person coming in, they came in for a day or two prior, work with me, but it doesn't take them all the way to the end, right? Usually the team lead at the elementary and even at secondary will kind of come in and kind of work with that person who's subbing or been selected to cover the maternity leave to work with that individual. Usually, it depends, it's case by case, but what we'd have to do is look at what the process is as it relates to the sub continuing the work that the teacher has begun them with. So it does happen where people plan out because they want it to go, smooth, they know their classes, but.
And I think to that end, those kinds of arrangements are happening. The administrator is involved in those kinds of arrangements. What we're addressing here is that your language that said the substitutes shall be trained and expected to perform all these duties. Well, you guys, once again, don't cover substitutes. Sorry. And so our language in this circumstance is just related to what the duties of substitutes will be.
Then we were right as the instructional staff person will not be required to do any
Yeah.
additional work while they're on leave. And then you can figure out the substitute.
We'll counter.
Oh, you're welcome.
But I'm just saying.
Why
if
not
the
do
substitute
the-
person-
Yeah, why not?
Because it's not that, it's not that we're not requiring them to do duty. It's just that the administrator may not want to pay a temporary sub to do duty when she can get someone else to cover it.
Yeah, but.
It will be covered.
$7.5 day.
No, they're not.
But it's not a responsibility of the teacher to take absence to cover it,
So
correct?
subs
It's not, yeah, it's not
Okay.
their responsibility. The language in the language that's in here is not saying that it is the teacher's responsibility to come in when they're on leave to cover the duty.
Or
What we're
to-
saying is, and what we're addressing is, what are the responsibilities of the sub?
Okay, but-
What we're addressing is just the responsibility of the sub, not what's the responsibility of the
The
teacher.
admin at our sites are saying that if you are going to be absent, you're responsible to find coverage of your duty. I'll show you the emails. We all have them.
Well, then
So
I would,
that's
then what I would
it's
ask
not
is
our
that
job.
you.
If we're out, it's not our job.
I got it.
Or
I get what you're arguing, for
Okay.
sure. I just would like for you to address the actual root of the issue and it's not about subs, it's about the responsibilities of the teacher. So counter with language
That's
that
because we're not out.
addresses, counter with language that speaks to exactly what you want the language to say as it relates to the teacher and not to the sub.
Okay,
The other issue, can I just bring up really quickly, is that a sub does not have access, but only in extenuating circumstances. Shane, if you can help to speak to have access to students' information, files and things of that nature, going in someone's grade book and putting things down. So we have to be careful about allowances that are given to people who have not been
And I don't,
working.
and
I just want to be clear. So when you're asking someone to go in and do, you just think the parents that you all engage with. So I'm just thinking, so keep that in mind. If you've got a sub that's been there the whole year, it's something different, it's
Oh, no.
unique, I get.
I don't
But someone coming
disagree.
in for 10 days and then, or you've been out for 2 months and then someone having access to all of your student
I-
records, I just be
I don't
careful.
disagree. I
Okay.
think that the problem that we're having is, while teachers are out on these extended leaves,
Okay,
is some of these issues are getting butted back to them via email.
okay,
Issues are with IEPs or well, does the sub know, is the sub informed? And,
okay,
and it's like, I'm not there.
okay.
Right, like I can't figure out what your issue is and at what point is your administrative staff or should be stepping in and doing that.
Okay,
And
so if you share with us, yes.
you got it.
Well, especially if the IEPs, well, every teacher could put something in.
Right.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah, like,
You're
we're not
for-
there.
You're gone for 6 weeks. What is the account? Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're gonna go to, we can go to 16.14. Yeah. And go forward.
All right, so with regard to 16.14. You guys, this is the bereavement leave piece, right? Yeah. And so what we indicated is that we're willing to change the bereavement leave across the board to 5.
Well, it's not green.
Oh, no, it's not. It's
We
different.
wrote a different paragraph.
Oh.
Blue, but
It's blue.
green.
It's our current it's our current language with an adjustment to the dates.
It's blue green.
Yeah.
16.21.
2-1, I gotta go backwards. I
Yeah.
figured out where it was just in a different space.
Yeah, okay.
Unfortunately, we're not willing to accept this language, current contract language. We feel like this language is necessary to ensure appropriate management of
One or
attendance
2-6?
issues.
2-1.
2-1.
2-1.
The language where it says verification of absence, and you're eliminating that entire paragraph that essentially
Current contract.
correct.
Okay.
That allows for us to ask for verification in instances where there may be excessive absenteeism and those kinds of things. Yes, we agree 100% that teachers are professionals, but I think every individual professional or or not is held to an attendance standard at work, right? And so we feel like it's a management right to hold people accountable to attendance standards, and we need this language in the contract to be able to.
There's attendance language in the contract for this that is previously in the contract that speaks to asking for doctor's notes and things as well. So there's already a provision.
Yeah. Well, okay. This provision was agreed to as well. And so we'd like to keep it. Okay.
It's just on the surface, it has a level of distrust of your teachers. Just like
If you were to let go of somebody because of attendance, before you let them go, would you request all of their verifications of where they were?
Well, I think that there's ground, like if you have an individual who has an attendance issue, we should be able to ask for verification. It has the intention
But
of,
that verification would come before they were issued a disciplinary action or a non-reappointment or whatever it may be that we verified, like if an employee's name 66666.
the intention is to say, okay, if an employee is legitimately sick,
Predetermination.
if the individual is legitimately sick, we want them to be able to use their time. They may be covered by the FMLA. They may be, they may have protections that they fall under, right? If they are not legitimately sick and they have an attendance issue and they're calling out, then we have a management right to address that. We just don't want to make an error by addressing an issue where an individual has been put on notice for excessive absenteeism, where they have a legitimate illness or sickness or reason for being out. That's the reason for the line.
and this is final point, the same way that it was kind of shared by Chris on Monday. High output, high exhaustion, like our high performers, high exhaustion are the ones who are losing most. And so when people go ahead and manage their time for mental health or needing breaks, things like that, and then now you go, well, I need to see your doctor note. It's just another step out the door. I'm just saying this is a slippery slope.
So, okay, can I say something? Is it a reality that we have, and if it is, I want to know about it. Tell us about it. Where we have a principal that is just in every circumstance where where people who have not exhibited any kind of attendance issue, they've not been put on notice for excessive absenteeism, that they're just every single time they're out, I need a doctor's. If that's the case, that's that's not in line with what the expectation is.
Well, but they're allowed to.
That's not what this says.
What it
It says we have the ability to verify absences, right? Superintendent or supervisor of the employee may require physicians or other verification, right? So in instances where they've been put on notice for prior excessive absenteeism, right? That's the point here, is that we have the ability to ask for it. And if we have someone that's doing that I would argue that If they're doing it in every single instance, if you're out, that's not the intention of the language, and we'll coach those individuals. Okay. All right, so that was 2-1. Now we're on 2-6. And this is related to the paid leave, parental leave for teachers. This is once again, this is one of those areas that the board was very intrigued and recognized that this is a growing trend. Within state government, within universities locally, that this is a growing trend. However, it's not a growing trend in K-12. And there are very, very, very few school systems in the state of Florida who have really delved into this area. We recognize there are a couple. And so what they've asked us to do is to dig into those policies and to determine how we might be able to implement this kind of a policy moving forward. We do anticipate that this, at the current levels within the teacher population alone, would cost us anywhere between $600,000 and $700,000 a year to implement this. Yes.
If a teacher is contracted today for the 47.5, and in 3 months from now, you find out that they need to take maternity leave for the back half of the school year, is their contract still not 47.5? So therefore they can be paid out their contract?
No, they have to be at work.
Well, in this scenario of paid leave, right? Not if we were to
Oh,
go,
you're saying if it was fully
If it
covered.
was-
if it was fully covered in paid
Okay, say
leave.
your example again.
Okay, so if we had this paid leave scenario, and as of today, you're contracted for 47.5, and then the back half of the school year, you take the last 8 weeks off. Was that teacher not already budgeted for 47.5 in the budget?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So therefore, would there be,
You wanna
or
speak?
how big of a fiscal impact would it be if they've already been budgeted at 47.5?
It's assumed, but there's the cost of the substitute that has to be factored in.
Okay,
So you're paying
so
for
the
it.
600 to 700,000 is the cost of the substitute, is what you're projecting.
And I'll go back and say again, I mean, you have to remember that we factor, because we base this on averages, the way we budget, we're already factoring in lapse salaries into everything that we do. There's no pot of money sitting on the side with the designation that says lapse salaries. It's part of what goes into the overall budget.
It's just a scenario of that person was already budgeted at 47.5. Is there the possibility that then, but
Yeah, I mean,
accounting?
but you understand, I mean, to be clear, lapse salaries is part of that mix. It's part of the mix. All right, so she's passing the last bit, and this is the supplemental language.
My phone numbers.
I'll go over the first one.
Yeah. Scott, you want to go over that? Yeah.
Why?
So
Is it?
hold on. So we have an agreement in principle, right? And Scott's going to cover the rest.
Starting with the first one, performing arts, the school board, and when we looked at it, agreed that a 12%, and it should be not, the line should be crossed out to encompass all other performing arts like steel drum, dance, orchestra. We didn't want to put it into one small group because some schools don't have steel drum, but they have orchestra. Some may have dance that don't have cheerleading or some form of that. So this is going to be 12% line item in the supplement that can be split up amongst different groups that they have, or if they site-based decides 12%, they can do 12% for somebody. But we're not putting a cap on it. It's just to cover the other performing arts and other things that are at the school and take it out of the academic group and really put it into that, which will help with the money as far as maybe adding another bass fishing club or something like that to a school that they have at the site base. So, yeah, it's a
It's actually,
legitimate sport.
it's actually, it's Kyle's and it's, I mean, it's actually a big thing.
No, go to,
It would open up something in a
Oh, I
different
know.
area.
but that
Use-
12% is for the performing arts, for all of those, and we'll get, drill down and give you the management, what we expect, what that encompasses. Sort of like we do with band and chorus, going to festivals, going, marching, so we'll get more directive on that as far as, the activity, what we expect for them.
That is the, I don't want to understate that
Right,
piece,
that's very
is
important.
that we have a management right to clearly define what these roles look like. And so if we have, a performing arts person who is, doing, doing a small club where they do something maybe once a month, or they do something once a year, they're not going to be fully entitled to this. We're going to set parameters around this, and it's going to be clearly articulated within our guide, our handbook, what those parameters are, so that we can ensure that we're agreeing with you guys, because we recognize that there are certain places like steel drum and guitar where they're doing significant activities, throughout the year, 2 and 3 times a month, they're doing things. There's others where they're not doing as much of a contribution, right? And so we recognize that it's going to be incumbent upon us to identify those positions, and sort of parameters, through our handbook.
And we will go over with the principals about this, probably have a Zoom or a Teams explaining what we've added, and I'll make sure that we make it clear about that. And a lot of them already do site-based, a lot of these, there's a list, they go through and people apply and show their bylaws, what they do, but we're gonna work on more specifics of this expectations. Moving on, any other questions about that one, or you just want to wait? All right, agriculture sponsor, 4% is, would be agreed, is what we are basically, doing, which would be about $1,342 for the year. Some have them as class. Yes, I know it's the after school, taking care of the animals, feeding them. That's comparable, 4% with, most of the other, looking at what we've been doing with other groups and things. So the 4% would be what we did. Math competition, we broke up into 2% for elementary, 4% for middle and high. That's what has been consistently done. As far as those two,
Workload greater for middle and high
oh, yes.
Yes.
than elementary.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
I talked to Giles today, and I think they go to about 12 competitions, plus they do the biggest competition in the state of Florida at their site. Most of the elementaries go to Cobb, I think they go to Giles. They go to
Mini Muse.
Nelson. They do like 3 mini Muse during the year. But comparable, yes, middle and highs, and that's what we'll set up, because there are some middle schools that, may not even have a team. So,
And that would be clear that another one of those things that we're outlining in the handbook is that if they do not have a team, they can't just give it to people to give it to, right? There's been times where
some schools just have a class, a math class, and
They're not competing.
they're not competing. They may have a math where they do stuff in there within it, but they're not going to any competitions.
They don't get-
The supplements are supposed to be after, used for when you're, the after hours, trying to help with that. Under the elementary, we did a look at, and we agreed on STEM chair and PBIS chair at 2%. And then the last one, that site facilitator, we already have in at all the levels at 3%, leaving that at the same level that it's already at for all 3 levels. Which is, if you want monetary, it's 3% is 1,000, 2% is 671, 4% is 1,342, and then the 12% is roughly 4,026 that can be divided up amongst the different groups.
no issue with changing the name. That's not a problem. We do not agree with adding a supplement for the council members. All right, and so, and this would be facilitated sort of, it's part of our overall package, right? But it's not coming out of the $4 million. It's being done alongside the $4 million. You know, we don't really have great data on exactly what it will cost, but we feel like it's stuff that we feel like it's a level of funding that we can afford. And then between now and next year, so if it's a huge amount, then we can always circle back around and say, hey, listen, this is a lot more than we anticipated, and have conversations along those lines. But we feel like we can definitely manage it. Last couple of items is
That's a question real quick.
yes, sorry.
When you crossed off the PTO and SAC for elementary, what was the rationale for crossing those off, but then needing to done with the
So a lot of our schools, a lot of our elementary schools have designated themselves, they go through PBIS training. So we did agree with that, because they're under that PBIS group, and that company that comes in that certifies all the schools. A lot of our PTO coordinators, from my understanding, I could be a little wrong, but from my understanding, some of these people are not even teachers at the school. Some of them are elected like PTO presidents, their parents, or some of these things. And we have a lot of team leaders or something that serve this that are getting supplements as well. And a lot of that PTO coordinator and the SAC coordinator stuff, or some of those people that are on those. And if you have something different, you can share that.
I think that's probably the PTO part, especially is very different in Title I. We have our PTO is very, very small.
And I understand. I was the PTO person for my Title I.
And so it's a speaker who's basically coordinating all of the events. And, you know, selling t-shirts and doing all the fundraisers, and like that's a lot. That person in our specific school does a lot more than a STEM chair or PBIS.
And I think part of the desire was to try and find ways where elementary normally does not get recognized, like we talked with an extra hour or with additional supplements like they have in middle school and high school, is to find different ways to go ahead and recognize some of the works. To the point of maybe the site leader, or I guess your team leader being the person who's on the SAC or PTO. I don't think the PTO SAC involvement is really team leader stuff. So it could be an additional supplement, like someone who is two different sports or something, in a way. So we appreciate the information, the rationale.
You guys are welcome to bring back additional information.
And I know also with the PTO, especially at Title I schools, a lot of our stuff falls on that parent liaison position that's kind of solely designated for the Title I schools. It may be a little different at your side, but I know that some of those things that you were just sharing encompasses some of those duties and responsibilities of that individual to be doing some of those things. So, but that's just something that we can continue to talk about and, you know, share some different experiences with.
Is there no MOU for the math competition response?
Not at this point, but I'll circle back on that.
Thank you.
I do have two other. You'll pass.
Oh, I was gonna ask. Instructional.
Right, just
Yeah, I watched. There, I know these are going to pass out. Is there an instructional technology coach that is being implemented at site to?
That was something that we talked about.
Because we've heard it, I just was
No,
trying.
we're not doing, I don't think it's, we're not doing a coach position, I think. Well, maybe they're in a coach position, but they're.
Okay, we're gonna caucus for a second. I mean, although, I mean, you gotta tell me, I mean, so we've run long, but I would rather get through all the stuff and maybe get, you know, an answer where we're at, you know, on certain things. Today, right? So if you'll get, if we're gonna caucus, we'll get you an answer on that issue and then we can talk more about it.
Well, I think, you know, given the time frame where we are right now, we're already 3+ hours in, and we've got the MOUs to look at, which I think they're exactly the same as they have been, right?
Yeah, I don't anticipate the MOUs. I mean, I would say we're probably within 5 minutes of being done.
Yeah.
With, and whether or not we want to.
For that.
Oh, you have to go to training to be an instructional technology coach?
Yes.
Okay. Is this a new supplement?
Yeah, this is.
So let me,
They're paying,
no,
you know,
That's
an
not
extra
a
hour. I think I'm paying, additional extended day.
Oh, 8.5 hour day.
we wanted to meet and facilitate. That's one of those things sort of under the radar here. So let me come back and we'll get you more information on that. You know, whether it's today or the next time, you know, you'll have to tell me what you guys want to do in terms of caucus at this point in time, or if you want to just answer. But I would like to go over the MOUs. I would say that these MOUs are very important, especially the VA school MOUs, the differentiated accountability. What you have here is sort of the standard MOU that we've utilized in the last couple of years for those individual schools. We had 5 schools last year, and really the only one of those schools that's the same this year is Appalachia. We have new agreements for Fort Bragg and David Palm this year. But like I said, it's language that is consistent with what we agreed to last year. And it's something that we need to have in place so that we can facilitate the additional activities required of us by DOE. And it does entail additional compensation where required, right? Where required to work additional hours, we're paying this as we have been. With regard to our teacher transfer process.
Real quick, we move on. So these 3 MOUs are the same as last year, or are there any differences?
They're the same. They're substantively the same language. What is different is the different schools, right? Because they're it applies to different schools, different school year.
Yep.
So,
but all the actual language.
All the actual language is essentially the same. All right.
Transfer day.
Transfer day, essentially the same thing. It's extending. We want to bring the new language proposal on the teacher transfer process. We're looking to extend the MOU for another year as we continue to seek out a process that works for us as a district. I can say that from a staffing perspective, we're in a better situation this year. You mentioned earlier, we have hundreds of openings. Well, we have quite a few openings still, right? But we're in a better situation this year than we have been in years past. 100% as it relates to staffing our schools. We experienced that same result last year. So it's getting better and better every year as a result of changing this teacher transfer process schedule and starting the recruitment for the new year earlier in the spring. And so that's something that we're seeing as an implication of this process. So we would like to extend it. So it's there. No real substantive changes to the language, only a change to the date and the sunset. And then we'll get you some information on this, the coach.
Yeah, I think, like we discussed yesterday, this idea of adding half hour here and an extra hour here. Although appreciated because it's trying to compensate people. The intent was if you're teaching an extra period. So if we're just automatically raising an hour and a half or half an hour and an hour, with it not being teaching the extra period in secondary, then I just need to know what contract language is being used, so we can take a look at it to just make sure that we're all on the same.
We can circle back. Is your preference, what are your preference to be to do it a different way?
I think,
Because I think
awareness of it, because usually you're aware when someone's getting an extra period. We're not aware when like half hours being added for what is perceived as additional job duties. And we just heard that you're not supposed to get paid for what are considered professional duties. So it's kind of like,
no, that's not it's not that you're not supposed to get paid for your professional duties. It's that you're already being paid in your salary for professional duties.
Right.
So
you're already
there's a
getting paid, but then
distinction there.
increase the pay by increasing the hours, then
I get what you're saying.
technically.
So I mean, I recognize that we haven't had the conversation about how this should be compensated, and so really what I'm asking is, would your preference for this be sorry, something? You know what I mean? If that's the case, then I think that we as a district need to take that into
We
consideration.
just want to make sure that whatever the contract language is, that we're all full understanding of which is being understood.
Well, and I will go back to, we've had conversations about past practice, right? And the practice has been in place for a very long time to use extended day for a lot of different things. That is something we need to dig into.
Yeah, I think it would be best to schedule a meeting to discuss the particulars in more detail.
So we're at.
So at this point, we're going to.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, you should have.
Yeah, and is there a date that you would like to discuss before we go ahead and finish on when we might be able to get back together? Have some of these.
Well, it is our sincere desire to get our employees, our teachers paid. And as I know it is yours as well. So yes.
I appreciate that.
So
it sounds like we're not.
So, but I mean, and so yes, we would like to schedule a time in the very near future to be able to get together. Do you have dates?
I think usually the limitations are a little more on your side.
So, just tell me when you're available. I think the limitations are a lot of times him.
Next week.
Okay. So
It's bargaining season, so I'm available for bargaining.
okay.
But the week of the 12th to the 16th, I'm pretty open. That's 2 weeks from now.
All right, well, that's the first week of school.
I don't work here, so.
Not for you. We visits.
I bring lunch. So
yeah,
week after.
I would, as soon as we can get it done, the better. Because like I said, we want to try and get this worked out. But it is our desire to get it done. But I mean, I just want to be very clear that we have put all of our cards on the deck. And from a financial perspective, where we're landing, you recognize is extremely close to the state requirement that we can't go under in terms of our fund balance, right? And so, I know that what your financial proposal was, and it's all like, okay, granted, and we wish we could do that, but we've put our best foot forward, and I do not anticipate our financial offer change.
Well, I think there's some things we need to do is like figure out exactly what numbers are being used in terms of staffing at which levels, like the 2250, those stuff, like we can't do any proposals without accurate numbers. That's first and foremost. So we can't
We can
counter
work through that.
get that kind of stuff. I think we would not be doing our due diligence if we didn't trust but verify on certain things, meaning maybe we need the AFR before we go ahead and make a final decision.
It will not be until September 11th.
So, I mean,
That's fine.
but
I mean,
I'm just letting you know, these are things that we have to consider. On
so, and like I indicated before, all the number is $4 million. That's what, in the greater scheme of our budget, regardless of we're counting the people that are grant funded or only focusing on the staffing plan, we're staffing that, or we're creating that budget, that $4 million number, taking into consideration all of the inputs that are coming in, including grant funded positions. So we're not just focused on the 1941, we're focused on the total student population and our greater financial position, because that's ultimately what goes back to that fund balance, you know, and the 3% requirement, which we're driving all the way down. Okay, we're driving as far, you know, it's way further than we ever have before. And, you know, so to be clear, what we've done in the past is based it on an average of 2,250 employees. And that's been the average that we've used. That's the average that we used last year, right? I get your desire to sort of narrow it down to what we're actually funding, but that's not a reality in terms of the way that we budget. Is all I'm saying. And that doesn't change even if we do go back and look at what the specific numbers are. And I think that if we looked a lot closer, we could say, oh, the actual average number is 2253.5 or something like that. But, you know, given that we've taken the risk associated with going over, that hasn't been necessary. So, yeah. But
I just can't say you're 8, right? Your salary increase would be this, because I have no numbers for how many people are at each level. Like those are the numbers we.
Where did you guys get the numbers that you used?
We got the numbers based off of the Skyward part and applied it to the 1941 in a ratio kind of piece. But then you don't even have 2250 in Skyward right now. So I mean, so.
But there's a baseline recognition that every single day, and actually depending on the time of day that you take that snapshot, that number will be different. So like, that's the reality.
The supplements would be my only concern if we trying to get this out to the principals and doing this, because the more we can get that moved along, you have to look at that somehow. So I can, because if we don't get them in by a certain date, it's going to get us October. If we're going to add this, I need to let them know so they don't plan to use other funds or 20%. So the supplement part, if we could have that, would the sooner the better, so I can get that to the principals. The last page we gave, that would be great. I mean, because that.
But those supplements are an enhancement to the current supplement.
Well, no, because now we're moving, like Steel Drum may have been being paid out of student production or out of academic clubs. And so that money now
it's opened up for other places.
We have to go to HR, create a code for them to be in there so they can now use that as a way of paying them on a PAF and doing that. So the money is right. In the past, they may have only gave them $500 for Steel Drum, but now they want to give.
I understand, but I'm saying the pot of money, they're not going to end up.
That is correct.
Correct.
No.
Right. But right.
So,
so we're not doing double paper.
Just to clarify, 100%, that money is in addition to the $4 million. Right. So, but just to facilitate the process, and we know that right now, and you know, so one of the things I told principals last week is, you guys need to jump on your supplements and get those PAFs to us, identifying who your supplements are ASAP, so that those individuals can get paid. Right. We recognize that that's always an issue in the first part of the year. We got to get around there. So any bit of delay that we have around the supplements piece impacts that. But we also recognize that it's a bargaining, it's a function of bargaining, and it doesn't happen until we agree, right? So at the same time, I think that we're gonna operate under status quo, and once we have an agreement, we'll go back and fix it. But it would be nice to, would be nice to go ahead and get that done sooner rather than later.
Nice to have 6 million instead of 4, but I understand.
Nice to have 10.
Yeah,
You got one? All right, thank you. We'll work on a date for another time.
yeah, we can.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Before